She entered the ballroom carrying nothing but a silver tray, yet within minutes, something she'd hidden for years would silence every voice in that golden room. And the moment was already on its way. Aiko steadied the tray just as the glass slipped from the edge of her hand. It didn't fall. She caught it midair, the liquid trembling but not spilling. A few heads turned at table 9. A pause, then laughter. The kind that cuts softly, like paper against skin. Richard Hale, the visiting American billionaire, raised his brows. "Impressive reflexes," he said to his translator in English before leaning closer and muttering something clumsy in Japanese. The accent was wrong, the tone worse. At least she looked smart for a waitress. His translator chuckled nervously. Around them, polite laughter rippled like static. Aiko smiled faintly, bowed, and turned away. Her heart beat hard, but her steps didn't falter. Years of serving people like him had taught her how to stay invisible, how to hold herself still until the moment passed. It always did. The hotel's ballroom gleamed under soft amber light, tables arranged like chess pieces before a match she wasn't allowed to play. She moved between them quietly, refilling glasses, replacing folded napkins, catching glimpses of graphs and numbers on open laptops. The summit was for investors, global minds discussing billions over champagne. For Aiko, it was another 12-hour shift. She'd once dreamed of being on the other side of those conversations, before her mother got sick, before the rent doubled, before she'd exchanged her place at the translation firm for an hourly uniform and shoes that blistered her feet. She had been good at languages, not just fluent, precise. Words had been her craft, the bridge she built between people who couldn't understand each other. Now, she built silence instead. Still, old instincts never faded. As she passed a table where Japanese and English overlapped in tangled confusion, she silently corrected their phrasing in her mind. Her lips moved without sound, an echo of who she used to be. Then came the familiar stab, nostalgia twisted with shame. Dreams were expensive. She had learned that lesson too well. At table 9, Hale's voice carried again. He was the kind of man who filled space just by speaking, unaware, or uncaring, that others shrank to make room. His translator whispered, the Japanese investor nodded politely, but Aiko saw the flicker of discomfort in their eyes. She recognized it, the look of someone forced to smile through disrespect. She kept working. That was what she could control. The presentation was set to begin soon. Aiko moved to the back wall near the service station, checking that the water jugs were full. From there, she could see everything. The anxious translator flipping through notes, the investors waiting with rehearsed smiles, Hale impatiently tapping his watch. Then, the first glitch. The projector froze mid-slide. Hale frowned, muttered to his assistant. The translator tried to recover, but his Japanese stumbled. Numbers didn't match, phrases tangled, the air thickened with tension. Mr. Sato, the lead Japanese investor, leaned forward. "Perhaps we should wait for the file," he said gently. Hale sighed loudly. "Can't anyone here fix this?" The translator's hands shook. He looked around for help, but the staff stood still, unsure. Aiko's fingers twitched. She knew. The document. They had rehearsed this presentation yesterday in the same room while she cleaned. She'd memorized the flow without meaning to. Market entry, revenue forecast, partnership clauses. It was all there in her head. Every term. Every number. She could fix this. The thought startled her. It wasn't ambition, just the reflex of someone who once belonged in rooms like this. But she stayed silent. Her job was to serve, not to speak. One mistake could mean losing it, and she couldn't afford another lost job, not with her mother's next appointment due. So she stayed still, tray at her side, listening to the fragments of misunderstanding unraveling across 2 languages. Minutes dragged. The tension spread, quiet but sharp. Hale's jaw tightened, Mr. Sato's expression cooled into polite withdrawal. The translator wiped sweat from his temple. Aiko's heart pounded. She thought of her mother's words, spoken years ago when Aiko had been offered her first interpreting job. Your words will open doors, Aiko, but never use them to step on others. Now, she wondered if silence could close a door just as firmly. Her eyes lifted. Hale pacing. Mr. Sato whispering to an assistant. She inhaled slowly, steadying the tremor in her hands. The sound of her breath filled the small world between her ribs and the room's growing unease. Then the moment passed. The projector flickered back to life. The translator stumbled through the rest, his voice too fast, too nervous. When it ended, Hale smiled tightly, pretending victory. The investors clapped politely. The deal wasn't lost, but the air had cooled. Aiko cleared the glasses one by one, her movements measured. No one looked her way now. The laughter had gone, replaced by hollow chatter. She kept her face calm, but something in her eyes had changed, something that watched rather than endured. As she passed near Mr. Sato, he looked up briefly. Their gazes met. For a heartbeat, he seemed to know. When the night ended, Aiko remained to clean the empty hall. The lights dimmed, leaving only the soft reflection of Tokyo's skyline across the glass walls. She stood still, staring at the rows of chairs, the stage, the silence. Tomorrow they'd meet again to finalize the contract, and maybe, just maybe, tomorrow she wouldn't stay silent. The next evening, the ballroom gleamed again. Same tables, same faces, same gold light spilling through crystal glass. But Aiko felt the difference before anyone spoke. It was in the air, heavy with unfinished business. The deal that had faltered the night before would resume tonight, this time with higher stakes and sharper eyes. She moved quietly between tables, adjusting place cards and filling glasses. Hale arrived late, his smile tight, his tone brisk. The translator followed close behind, carrying folders like shields. The Japanese investors were already seated, calm but distant, polite in that way that hinted at disappointment. Aiko's shift had started early. She'd polished every spoon, checked every microphone wire, ensured the slides were in the right sequence. She didn't know why she cared. It wasn't her meeting, but she couldn't stop herself. She wanted order, harmony, redemption in any form. As she passed the mirror near the stage, her reflection caught her off guard. Hair neatly pinned, eyes clear, posture steady. For the first time in a long while, she looked like someone who remembered who she used to be. The meeting began. Hale started his presentation, this time reading from a printed script to avoid another mistake. The translator echoed each line into Japanese, his voice uncertain, his phrasing uneven. Within minutes, the rhythm faltered again. The investors exchanged glances. Mr. Sato leaned back, expression unreadable. Perhaps, he said gently in Japanese, we should pause until communication can be clarified. The translator froze. Hale frowned, not understanding. What did he say? No answer came quickly enough. The silence stretched too long. Hale's impatience cracked through it. Someone translate that, he snapped. Aiko was standing near the back, tray balanced on her fingertips. The words reached her like a bell. Before she could think, she heard her own voice, clear, steady, professional. He said perhaps the meeting should pause until communication is clarified. Every head turned. Aiko lowered the tray onto the side table. The room seemed to shrink around her. Hale blinked, confused. What did you say? She met his gaze without lowering hers. I used to be a translator, she said softly, her English fluent, accent precise. Then she switched to Japanese, her tone graceful but firm. If you'd like, I can interpret the rest of the discussion until your translator is ready. The silence that followed wasn't cruel this time. It was stunned. Mr. Sato's eyebrows lifted slightly. Then he nodded. Please, he said. Hale hesitated, his pride catching against his need. The investors waited. Finally, he gestured stiffly. Fine, if it helps. Aiko stepped forward. Her hands no longer shook. She took the translator's place beside the screen, her figure outlined by the soft gold light from above. The moment she began to speak, the room changed. Her voice flowed like calm water, English to Japanese, Japanese to English, carrying the meaning of every word, not just its sound. She didn't embellish or perform. She simply connected one world to another. The investors leaned forward. Hale, for once, said nothing. Minutes passed in seamless rhythm. Complex financial terms, cultural nuances, idioms that would have caused confusion, all bridged effortlessly. The presentation, which had felt strained and hollow the night before, unfolded smoothly under her guidance. When it ended, the applause began not from the guests, but from the Japanese side of the table. Mr. Sato rose first. "Your employee," he said in English, "has given this meeting more professionalism than we have seen all week." He looked at Hale with calm finality. "We will proceed with the agreement." Hale stood there, face stiff but eyes uneasy. "Thank you, Miss Aiko Tanaka," she said simply. He nodded once, swallowing his pride. "Thank you, Miss Tanaka." Her expression didn't change. "You're welcome, sir." Then she stepped back, reclaiming her tray as if nothing extraordinary had happened. The meeting resumed with renewed warmth. Deal signed, hands shaken, but the real shift had already occurred, in the quiet recognition that moved through the room like light through glass. The same men who had laughed at her 24 hours earlier now lowered their heads slightly when she passed. When it was over and the guests drifted out, Aiko stayed behind to clear the tables. Mr. Sato approached as she stacked the glasses. "You spoke beautifully," he said in Japanese. "Why are you here doing this work?" Aiko smiled faintly. "Because life changes plans," she said. "But words, they stay," he bowed lightly. "Then let this night remind you, you still have a voice worth hearing." When he left, she stood alone in the soft hum of the empty hall. The Tokyo skyline shimmered beyond the glass wall, reflections of light rippling across her face. On the table where Hale had sat, a single folded napkin remained, perfectly creased, untouched. She picked it up and placed it gently onto her tray. The chandeliers dimmed to a warm amber glow. For a moment, everything was still. The city, the silence, the quiet dignity she had reclaimed. Aiko turned off the last light and walked out of the ballroom. Behind her, the reflection in the glass caught the faint outline of a woman standing tall. Not a waitress anymore, but someone who had finally remembered her place in the world.